Hi everyone, it's Stats Sean again, continuing with my 2025 MLW Award Analyses. And today I'm talking about the biggest one, the MVP race. A full MVP ballot has 10 slots for players on it, and I've identified 13 players to potentially round out my personal ballot. These players have been separated into three groups. The finalists, the three players I think have a reasonable argument to win the overall MVP. Ballot locks, five names I know will be in the 10 slots, but don't have a shot to take first place. And the bottom of the ballot, five remaining candidates fighting for the final two votes. I won't waste time though. Let's jump right in with the top of the table, the three finalists. Okay, we have to talk about Ryan Cratch's defense and base running. If you don't care about those aspects of wiffle ball, well then Cratch is the MVP. Congratulations, you have your winner. If you do care about them, I have some alarming stats for you. In 2025, Cratched was dead last in MLW in both defensive run value and base running run value. Looking at the numbers, it's obvious how this happened. On the base paths, Cratch took only 4 of 17 potential extra bases, a below average rate, and was thrown out in a non-force situation an astonishing 4 times, a full third of all occurrences in the 2025 season for the whole league. For the defensive value, Crouched was actually solid in a limited sample playing the left side. His problem came as a pitcher. He was only 71% on making potential catches, compared to 82% for the league, accounting for about a negative run. Issues with getting force outs were the bigger factor, with him only going 6 for 18, well below the 55% average, and racking up 4 runs of negative value. Of course, fielding and running are the smaller aspects of whiffs, behind the major components of hitting and pitching. Do I even need to say anything about Cratch's bat? The numbers were patently insane. 12 homers, a 261 OPS plus, and 4.6 batting war. The pitching wasn't as strong. He totaled enough innings to stay above replacement level, but was worse than league average by both RA3 and FIP. Adding everything up, Cratched was worth about 23 runs, which is 4 wins, in the 2025 season. He's still the best player in MLW and may very well win his fourth consecutive MVP, but the defense and base running weaknesses, as well as the down pitching season, take him from a runaway favorite to just one of 3 candidates. Any season where Jordan Robles puts up more than 30 runs of pitching value should really be an MVP season, especially when it coincides with Cratch showing some chinks in the armor for once. Yet, there was something different in 2025 than the typical Robles season. In his first 3 years, Jordan had been worth at least 1 WAR with the bat each season, running a total 167 OPS plus. In 2025, he had just an 84 OPS plus for only 0.3 WAR. I don't think this will necessarily continue. His contact skills were still good, and he's always walked a ton. He had a very low 333 BABIP, a number that should rebound. But in 2025, the offense wasn't there, and the MVP race is based on what has happened, not what will happen. Despite having the first below average offensive season of his career, however, Robles is still an MVP candidate based on just 2025, and that's because of his pitching. He was second in the league in innings while being the third best pitcher on a rate basis. Add in the always incredible strikeout and walk numbers, and he was more than 5 wins on the carpet, more valuable than even Cratch's bat. The little things add something too. He was the most valuable fielding pitcher in 2025 and rated fourth in base running value as well. That could be enough to put him over the top and win his first MVP. Though if he had hit like himself, it honestly wouldn't even be a discussion. So if Cratch's case is reliant on his bat, then Robles is reliant on his arm. An all-around MVP candidate is Dustin Staggs. He doesn't have a standout aspect like either of his peers, but when you total it all up, he's right there with them, with his 27 total runs of value actually higher than that of Cratched. So how'd he arrive at this number? Well, on the offensive side, it's a combination of walks and bat-to-ball skill. Only Chris Cheatham walked at a higher rate, and only Nick Saylor and Levi Fleer had a better contact rate. It came out to him being third in batting value. Pitching, Staggs dominated in his truncated season. He was the single best MLW pitcher with multiple appearances on a rate basis, tallying the lowest RA3, FIP, and XFIP in the group. It was only 12 and a third innings, but in that span, he still got up to sixth place in pitching run value. Then there's the defense, where he was second on the left side and fifth overall. He was even second in base running runs at one point, before he was thrown out advancing twice in the World Series, bringing him to pretty much a neutral total there. Overall, the entire game for Staggs was so strong that, despite not having one singular standout skill that jumps to mind when describing his 2025, he still made it a season worthy of MVP consideration. Hitting all the run values of the finalists against each other, as well as converting the total to WAR, Robles comes out with a solid lead, while Staggs edges out Cratched for the second spot. But I'll be honest, that feels wrong, right? So much of the value for Robles comes from his gigantic amounts of playing time, something that's not entirely in his control. And because of that, using replacement value might be a little disingenuous. Let's look at value over average instead of over replacement. Now Staggs closes almost all of the gap between himself and Robles, while Cratched actually drops back a bit. Yet it still feels like Cratch should be the MVP, probably because the small things are the ones that eat away at his value, and those hold less of a place in our minds. So, how about if we remove those small aspects and we look just at batting and pitching? This is when Cratch really gets in on the race. Using replacement as the baseline now, he's well ahead of Staggs and has nearly caught Robles, while with average as the measuring stick, all three may as well be tied. Overall, the pick comes down to preference for how someone accumulates their value, but these are definitively the top three candidates, even if the order has room for debate. Similarly, the next five slots don't have much question about who should occupy them either. I'm going to speed through this section a bit. We all know these next five players belong on the ballot, and I don't particularly care about the order, well, except for this one. Dallas Allen is essentially a tier of his own as the fourth place finisher. His value comes a little too much from playing time for me to put him with the finalists, but there's some real separation between him and the next four guys. I guess I should also say something about Dallas's season. The pitching was great, though not quite Cy Young worthy. The bat was above average as always. The defense was positive, though not spectacular. It was pretty much a normal Dallas Allen season, one where he was the fourth best player in MLW. It's really that simple, and I don't think any of you particularly need me to go deeper into it than that. Sawyer Bean is someone who I've already discussed in the context of Cy Young, Silver Slugger, and Gold Glove Awards. He didn't win any of those three. I think those two statements combined are the best way to sum up his season. He was just good at everything, but not great at anything. A good enough pitcher to be the number one on a team, but thanks to shying away from his super drop, not quite a world-beating ace. An above average bat who you'd prefer to have as the second best hitter on a team than your aircraft carrier. A defender who makes plays more often than not. Obviously, Sawyer will get a boost in fan MVP voting from his strong World Series, and I'm fine with that. I don't personally consider the context of when stats were accumulated. That's a tiebreaker to me, but some people do value that, which I get. So yes, Bien should be in the middle of any MVP ballot, from just being good across the board. And if you reward context, well, maybe put him at the top of this group of ballot lock. Hayden Irwin earns his ballot spot by virtue of having been the best pitcher in MLW 2025 at not allowing runs. He's a Cy Young candidate for that, and given how valuable ace pitchers are, he finds himself firmly within the middle of the MVP ballot too. Unfortunately, due to inconsistency with the Cobras' roster availability, Irwin did have to bat sometimes, and that really handicaps Mr. I's candidacy for this overall award. In 26 at bats, he recorded just 2 hits and walked at a well below average rate. This 3-run loss isn't offset by defense either, where Irwin was almost exactly league average. His pitching was excellent, checking in with the third most run value in that regard. But with the other aspects of his game giving no help and even actively hurting his total this season, he can't escape this down ballot block. Jimmy Norp is most similar in this race to Staggs, except with the brightness turned about a quarter of the way down. By that I mean that Norp's case isn't centered entirely around one carrying side of his game, but more an overall body of work. Even with that true, though, there is a headliner, his bat. The spotlight was stolen by other hitters like Cratched and Landon Urgitis, who I'll get to, but Norp was pretty easily the fifth best MLW hitter in 2025. He put up his best offensive numbers in years after shifting to an on-base and power process. Normally, that would make Jimmy a very serious MVP candidate. But while the other aspects of his game were positive this season, they weren't quite up to Jimmy Norp standards. He had a below average RA3 and FIP, albeit only slightly below, so he was still above replacement as a pitcher. The defense was good, of course, but it was actually outside the top 10 in value. His 9 extra bases taken, which were the third most in MLW, were undercut by a throwout on the base paths. All of it does boost his case, more so in not actively hurting him than by adding anything, though. So while the case isn't only his bat, that's the front man. It's mostly his bat. And that wasn't enough to make him a real choice for the top of the ballot, though it clearly was for the middle or bottom. Remember everything I just said about Caden Irwin a minute ago? Rinse and repeat for RJ Walgate. The new manager of the Magic, congratulations to him by the way, was the second most valuable pitcher this season, yet everything else drags his case down. He did finally record his first career hit this year, going on to finish 4 for 25 overall with a 34 OPS plus, meaning he was worth roughly -2 runs at the plate. Throughout his career, he's always been a weak fielder, and that repeated itself in 2025, with -2 runs there as well. Yet, RJ is still at the top of this mid-ballot heap for me personally. The pitching was just that great, and it was convincing too, both in the way he piled up strikeouts and in just how it looked just to watch him. I may not have picked him as my Cy Young, but I value pitching a lot more than I do hitting, mostly for the percentage of innings an ace can pitch compared to the percentage of plate appearances a leadoff hitter can take. And Walgate was the silver medalist in pitching this year, at least for me. He'll appear higher on my ballot than some players with strong two-way cases, despite his definite one-way season. Dallas is alone atop this group. I've already said that. The others, though, the ones who are getting my personal votes 5 through 8, they're pretty interchangeable. Walgate should place above Irwin, since that's how I voted for Cy Young. It would be inconsistent to change that here. But other than that, I think these four can really go in any order, and I'm not going to get worked up by someone disagreeing with me on that. Switching to the above average rather than above replacement comparison, things change a bit. One major decision is revealed to me. RJ Walgate has to get the fifth place vote. He actually leaps Dallas here. Drilling down to just batting and pitching, Irwin maintains a pretty sizable lead over Bean and Norp for the sixth slot, with those two-way guys essentially tied with each other, meaning which one is 7 and which one is 8 becomes a matter of preference. Personally, I'm putting Bean in the higher spot, since he was above average in both main ways, while Norp was below in pitching. I still have 2 more votes to cast, though, even with my top 8 cleared up. And to fill them, I considered 5 candidates. I suspect that if any of my inclusions on this candidates list are controversial, this is the one, Patrick Ballman. And honestly, I get it. It makes me a little uncomfortable discussing someone who only played a partial season in a year so short as MLW's as reaching an MVP ballot. But I can't ignore what Ballman accomplished in his playing time. Namely, being a down ballot Cy Young candidate and accumulating the most defensive run value in the league. His offense is a non-factor, rounding to literally 0 value to the 10th of a run. But in a top-heavy league, having value in one major and one minor facet of the game while not actively hurting your case in any way, is certainly enough to contend for a ninth or 10th place nod. Yes, I'm including Chris Cheatham. He was in the running for second best hitter of the season. Unfortunately, he's mainly a DH at this point. I really do miss seeing him play the left side. Cheatham was very good at it, leading MLW in defensive run value in 2024, and still putting up a positive mark this year, despite hardly touching the field. Of course, I'm burying the lead. He posted a 613 on base percentage and 190 WRC plus, being one of just 4 players to reach 2 batting WAR on the season. With how much I value pitching, it's tough for me to consider someone who faced 3 batters all season for an MVP ballot, but Cheatham certainly did enough that he put himself in the conversation despite that fact. Okay, I'm dropping the pretense here. I said that I considered 5 players for these final 2 spots. That's not true. I considered 4. I never considered Preston Colm for my MVP ballot. He's here because I know that other people would consider him. The argument is pretty simple, right? He was the most important hitter of the postseason, notching the go-ahead RBI in every one of the Mallards' 5 playoff wins. But I don't care about that. He doesn't control that context, so I don't take it into account. That's not to say he didn't have a good season. He had a very good season. A 137 OPS plus and positive fielding at 2 different positions is welcome on any roster. So is being an emergency pitcher. But the other 12 players in this video were definitively better than PK in 2025, and he's not touching the ballot above any of them. Jackson Pearson already got the last spot on my Cy Young ballot, and now he may get the last spot on my MVP ballot too. And it's essentially for the same reason. Despite starting the year 3rd on the Wildcats' pitching depth chart, he ended it as the ace, throwing every single pitch of their playoff series. And he earned that promotion, posting well above average run prevention with ERA estimators to match. Despite placing just 8th in innings pitched, he was 5th in pitching WAR. It's a pretty one-dimensional case, as JP may be the lowest true talent fielder in MLW, and his offense is almost entirely propped up by 4 homers. I don't care. I love pitching value, and Jackson provided plenty of it in 2025. The final candidate I'm covering in this race is Landon Urgitis, who I put a pin in earlier. Earlier, I called Cheatham maybe the second best hitter of the season. That was a lie. Landon was the second best hitter. Among qualifiers, he was second behind only Cratched in all of OPS, OPS plus, and batting WAR, as well as placing 3rd in batting average and batting plus. That's the beginning and end of this case, though. Second best hitter in the league. Yes, Landon did pitch a little, but it was all of 2 innings. Yes, he played the right side a good bit, but he was essentially average at it. Those facets can be ignored. His bat never can be. Using the value over replacement metrics, all of these candidates for the 9th and 10th place votes, save for Colm, may as well be tied. They're separated by 1.6 runs. It's looking like these 2 slots will come down to preference, but for due diligence, I'll do the other checks I've been performing first. Things remain very packed together while using average as the comparison point. The respective strengths of Urgitis and Pearson stand out more, but overall no new information is really found. When using just the 2 major aspects of whiffs, Pearson is the biggest gainer, while Ballman falls back. Ultimately, since these players all may as well have been one way, I'm going to make my decision based on their strengths rather than on the overall games. Alright, first things first. I did in fact go with the pitching of Robles over the bat of Cratched and the well-rounded game of Stags. Personal preference. I do care about those little things like defense and base running, which hurt Cratch to me, and Robles' massive cadre of innings really means something. In the middle, I changed this order frequently after Allen, but ended up taking the spectacular pitchers over the very nice two-way players. To round it out, I went to the strengths. Landon's offense and Pearson's pitching were the strongest parts of the season left standing, in that order. Cutting off at 10 hurt. I really wanted to find room for Cheatham to recognize the season he had, but I just couldn't get him in there. Same with Ballman, who I think was a top 10 player performance-wise, but due to his injury, I just couldn't find room for him.